Good evening from London, and good evening from me, Dr. Dermot Hudson, Chairman of the British Group for the Study of the Juche idea, Chairman of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK, and of course, the owner of the SONGUN007 channel. And welcome to our 22nd live stream. Yes, we got up to 22 live streams, and we're going to continue more. And in tonight's live stream, I'm going to talk about a couple of subjects. So I'm going to briefly respond to the article in the Londoner about me, which was a real hatchet job. I'm also going to talk a bit about my forthcoming book, or well, it's actually published now. Just waiting for it to come back from the printer. My book on the DPRK's struggle against revisionism, and also speak about how self-reliance beats the sanctions and the need to take the case for Juche to students. So anyway, let's kick off talking about the Londoner. Publication I'd never heard of before. It's a subscription only publication, and about a month ago I got contacted by their reporter, their journalist, who said he wanted to interview me and do an article on me. So I thought, okay, good opportunity for a bit of publicity for KFA UK. And the journalist in question did have sort of leftish credentials. He'd actually previously written for the revisionist Morning Star and the revisionist People's World in the US. So I thought, I'll give this a go. Now, originally, he wanted to come to the flat, which I refused, as I saw this as very intrusive. And anyway, at the time, the flat had actually genuinely suffered water damage because of a leak from the upstairs flat, and it was not really in suitable condition to receive visitors. So anyway, we agreed to meet at the Imperial War Museum. I thought that was a fairly okayish place to meet, sort of neutral ground. And we walked around the museum. He had some photographs taken, and I was interviewed for about 2 hours. And some of it was a bit like an interrogation, or the old stuff was dredged up, warm beer, stuff that happened in KFA UK about 6 years ago. The Mole film, all this old rubbish was dredged up, and it became apparent that it was quite hostile, questioning, and I found him quite hostile. In the end, the article was published on the in the Londoner, but most of it is hidden behind a paywall. You have to subscribe to the Londoner to actually read it. But from what I could see, it was a hatchet job. He'd asked me about my interests and hobbies, as well as about my personal life, and I found the questions about my personal life very intrusive and also quite unnecessary. It doesn't have anything to do with KFA or the DPRK. But he asked about this. But anyway, he asked also, about hobbies and interests. And I mentioned that besides the DPRK in Juche. I have some other interests, like I like visiting windmills, like going for walks. I like railways a bit. I like traditional Doctor Who. Uh, you know, uh, I think sort of fair, fairly varied and balanced interests. However, in the article, I got described as a windmill enthusiast, quote unquote, which is not, doesn't really sum me up at all. Like to say, yes, I like to visit windmills, but I only have a few books on windmills. I don't have a house full of windmill books, and I don't spend every minute of the day thinking about them. And similarly, I was also described as a former civil servant or retired civil servant, which I didn't like at all, because it was never my choice to work in the civil service, utterly boring and low paid job. If I'd had a choice, I would have never gone within 10 miles of a sort of government department. But I was a refugee from Thatcher's dole queue. I graduated in 1983, and I was out of work about 6 years. Well, some of that was like time on government schemes, the old community programme, which I think most viewers here are too younger to remember. But in the 1980s, you had the so-called community programme, which was a work creation scheme where people were given 1 year's work and then back on the dole, and used to often do pointless tasks like cutting down trees, etc. So I joined the civil service in order to avoid being permanently unemployed, which I was really afraid of. But of course, these people in the bourgeois elite, these people who get everything in life handed to them on a plate, born with a silver spoon in their mouths, don't understand this. So, I mean, it was an accident of history that I was in the civil service. I hated it. It was absolutely boring. And basically, as some viewers will know, I was actually victimised in the civil service for my support for the DPRK and for my work for KFA, and I was, forced to take early retirement. But I don't think it describes me in any way to call me a former civil servant. That is not me. I prefer to be called a writer and an activist. That's how I would see myself, and that is really what I am. I'm a writer of numerous books, and I'm an activist. So it was a very, I think, inappropriate label to put on me. But this goes to prove that the media, it goes without saying, are not accurate, they're not objective, and the only reason why they can't come off interview people is usually to smear and finger people or create some kind of problem for them. So I mean, that is my response to the Londoner interview. And now just say a bit about my latest book, which is called Anti-Revisionist Fortress of Juche, People's Career and the Struggle Against Revisionism. And I completed that last week and uploaded it to lulu.com, and I'm just waiting for it to the printed copy to come. I'll put a link in the chat later so people can buy the book if they wish. And as I say, when I was writing this book, I had a lot of difficulties, because not only did I have the problems with the flat and cold weather, but also, as some people will remember, YouTube, or Google, more accurately, Google, the parent company of YouTube, actually deleted the other channel, KFA UK. They deleted that channel, but unfortunately, they also deleted the entire Google account associated with that channel. So they deleted an email address and Google Docs. And unfortunately, I'd been writing the book on Google Docs, so I lost it, and that set me back about 6 weeks to 2 months. Sat to write or rewrite from memory. But luckily, I was able to make up time and to meet the deadline that I'd set myself for its completion, which I'd aimed to complete in May. And I actually managed to complete it a bit earlier, despite losing 6 weeks. So nowadays, some interest is being aroused in the DPRK's anti-revisionist struggle, which had been previously ignored by many or belittled. You know, you got the conventional or orthodox logic that, oh, the DPRK supported China, you know, for some time. You know, and I remember my experience in my old CBGB branch years ago in the 1980s, when I'd first got interested in the DPRK. And you know, I asked the branch about the DPRK, and the answer I got was, "Oh, them, they're funny, like them Chinese." And you know, I think this shows you how the DPRK was misunderstood by so-called British communists and belittled, and its anti-revisionist struggle was played down. And you know, in recent years, I think there's been a lot of more interest in the DPRK's anti-revisionist struggle. I would just mention that British academic Dr. Joe Pateman published an article in a scholarly journal titled "North Korea, the Last Remaining Bastion of Anti-Revisionism in 2023." And the Bangladeshi writer, my friend Dr. M. Jangir Khan, in his book Everlighting Beacon, published in 2020, made some reference to the DPRK struggle against the Soviet-led modern revisionists, as well as the hostility of the Soviet revisionists towards the DPRK. I would mention that back in 1999, I wrote the article, "The Workers' Party of Korea's Struggle Against Revisionism," based on the paper I'd presented to the National Committee for Marxist-Leninist Unity earlier. In 1995, the DPRK itself published a book, "Experience of the Anti-Revisionist Struggle of the Workers' Party of Korea," written by Ho Jung-un, Department Director of the Academy of Social Sciences of the DPRK. Very helpfully, Brazilian comrades have translated the whole book into Portuguese, and I was able to use auto translate to translate it into English, so it was very useful. Anyway, the book basically will give a survey of the DPRK's struggle against revisionism, starting in the 1950s and going right up to the present day. And I think it's quite important to publish such a book, because nowadays ultra leftists on social media not only try to deny the anti-revisionist struggle of the Workers' Party of Korea and the DPRK, but slander the DPRK, calling it revisionists. These self-styled anti-revisionists, Maoists, quote unquote, and Hodgerites, quote unquote, on the internet and social media, who scoff American peach and quaff Coca-Cola, are totally ignorant of the independent, Juche-based anti-revisionist struggle of the Workers' Party of Korea. It is my hope that in publishing the book, that I will set the record straight concerning the DPRK's anti-revisionist struggle, and will give a greater understanding of it. Right, so we'll now just move on to my other topic, or well, one of several other topics that I've planned to cover tonight, and there will be a chance for questions at the end. I think I'll be able to take 30 or so minutes of questions. Anyway, what about the sanctions against the DPRK? And I'm sure all of you have seen the news recently of the opening of the third stage of Hwasong Street, which is truly amazing. And you saw the bright lights of Pyongyang, and all the time the mainstream media and people like NK News and Miss Plastic Face in the US tell us that there's no electricity in the DPRK, but you saw a real blaze of light. So, how does the DPRK survive, and not only survive, but prosper under these intense sanctions of their enemies? Well, the thing is, first of all, the sanctions are not new for the DPRK. And in fact, the DPRK is one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world, if not the most heavily sanctioned country in the world. And this has existed for a long period of time. And we've got to also realize that it's absolute nonsense when people say that the sanctions were imposed simply because of the DPRK's nuclear program. In fact, the sanctions against the DPRK go back a very long way, long before the DPRK's first nuclear test, and long before developing nuclear weapons was even being considered in the DPRK. The US first imposed sanctions on the DPRK in 1950. It's created 40 different acts of sanctions against the DPRK, such as the Act of Export Control, the Act of Trade with the Enemy, the Act of External Aid, the Wassenaar Agreement in the 1990s, and the Act of International Financial Structure in 1994. By these acts, all economic sectors of the DPRK are under sanctions, and the DPRK is prohibited to make trade, financial transactions, and exchange of science and technology. In the past, decade or so, or past decade and a half, the UN Security Council, under the baton of the US imperialists, adopted sanctions against the DPRK under the pretext of the DPRK's nuclear test and satellite sanctions. Sanctions were imposed in 2006, 2009, 2012, 2013, and of course 2016, 2017. But these sanctions were unable to check either the DPRK's nuclear and space programs or the massive construction program, which saw multi-story buildings rise one after another in quick succession and literally rise from the bare earth in Pyongyang. In fact, in the 1950s, when the sanctions and blockade of the imperialists and other Western countries was most intense, the DPRK faced pressure from the big power chauvinists and revisionists. This did not impede the growth of the DPRK. Instead, the Korean people, under the leadership of President Kim Il-sung, launched a Cholima movement. Cholima being the legendary winged horse of Korea that can cover a great distance in a day. During this period, industrial output soared by 36% per year. Two Western academic economic experts, Brun and Hirsch, in their book Socialist Korea, wrote, and I quote, "When it is considered that one of the most acute problems in industrial development of nations with a low starting point is created by the competition of advanced nations, one can grasp the short-sightedness of the embargo policy. Thus, strange as it may appear, the effects of the Western embargo against the Asian socialist countries may have been far different than those intended." End of quotation. During the early 1960s, rather than being the great benefactor and helper of the DPRK that some imagine, the Soviet Union actually suspended economic cooperation with the DPRK, basically imposing its own form of sanctions on the DPRK because it refused to follow the revisionist policies of the USSR. President Kim Il-sung said, and I quote, "The revisionists fell on their knees before the threat and blackmail of the US imperialists and capitulated against the interests of the revolution." He further explained that there were some difficulties in the implementation of the 7-year plan had been caused by the revisionists, but stressed, and I quote, "We could not give up our revolutionary principles and toe the line of the revisionists' capitulation just for a few more tons of steel." End of quotation. Secondly, the sanctions will fail because of the Juche idea, because of the policy of self-reliance and self-development and the power of the independent Juche-based economy of the DPRK. President Kim Il-sung himself had stressed that the Juche idea is actually a weapon to combat imperialist sanctions and blockades, saying, and I quote, "The United States, Japan, and other modern imperialist states are now blockading our country in the political, economic, and military spheres. But the Korean communists have a sufficient amount of vitamins of the Juche type with which to frustrate that blockade. The attempt to conquer the Workers' Party, Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and the Korean people by military means will stifle them politically and economically is a wild daydream, like an attempt to break a rock with an egg." After the evacuation of the guerrilla zones, small units and political workers actively infiltrated into the homeland. The seeds of the revolution were sown in the vast lands of Manchuria and Korea. End of quotation. This wise teaching perceptively foresaw the desperate attempts of the US imperialists and their marionette, the UN Security Council. The DPRK's independent national economy can produce almost any product, from a mere wristwatch or a pencil to a nuclear missile. In the 1970s, the DPRK was able to produce 98% of its own machinery and 75% of fuel and industrial materials. Foreign trade is a small percentage of the gross national product in the DPRK, I think about 4%. And this contrasts with South Korean puppet regime, which derives 88% of its gross national product from foreign trade and is therefore highly dependent. Thus, a large part of the DPRK's GDP, about 96% of it, would be unaffected by sanctions. The DPRK's Juche-based, self-reliant, independent national economy is very strong. You cannot see in Pyongyang foreign-owned banks towering above the streets of Pyongyang like you do in some countries. The DPRK economy is owned and run basically by the Korean people. A typical example of the DPRK's Juche-based national economy is Vinalon, a synthetic fibre produced from limestone, which means that DPRK did not need to import cotton. The DPRK perfected a Juche-based method of iron and steel production without coking coal. In recent years, the DPRK succeeded in making a tube train with indigenous resources and technology, as well as a light airplane and, of course, different artificial satellites were launched entirely using DPRK technology and resources. Respected Marshal Kim Jong-un emphasized the principle of self-development first, saying, "Worship of big countries and dependence on foreign forces is the road to national ruin. Self-development alone is the road to sustaining the dignity of our country and our nation, and to paving a broad avenue for the revolution and construction." The DPRK will always stand firm against the sanctions. It will increase import substitution. And the DPRK's self-reliance is not an abstract concept or throwaway line. It is a fundamental principle applied in real life. And I saw this for myself in the Ryong kimchi pickle factory, which I visited in February 2019, where imported machinery had been replaced with DPRK produced machinery. And when I visited the DPRK in 2019 and 2024, the shops were very well stocked. You didn't see that many foreign products. In fact, compared to the 1990s, you see actually more domestically produced DPRK products in the shops. So Self-reliance works, and it is the DPRK's secret weapon against the sanctions. And just quickly, before I go on to the very final subject, I'll just answer a question that came up last time about the DPRK's relations with the former Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, the progressive state that existed between 1978 and 1992, and of course was betrayed by the Soviet Union. So anyway, the DPRK actually welcomed the SUR, I hope I pronounced that right, or April Revolution in Afghanistan in 1978, and established close relations with the new government of the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. President Kim Il-sung himself was favorably impressed, and he wrote, "The emergence of a new revolutionary power in Afghanistan was an epoch-making event which brought a radical change to the life of the Afghan people." End of quotation. The new revolutionary government in Afghanistan severed relations with the South Korean puppets, which was very good. In September 1979, Rudon Sinmun, the daily paper, the Workers' Party of Korea, wrote, and I quote, "The people of Afghanistan, under the proper leadership of the PDPA and under the leadership of the great leader of the people of Afghanistan, Comrade Nur Mohammad Taraki, have eliminated the old reactionary system of government and are sternly defending the fruits of the revolution and courageously striding ahead towards a society free of exploitation." I think it's also interesting that Rudon Sinmun actually called Nur Mohammad Taraki the great leader of the people of Afghanistan, which to me signifies that they were very closer to his leadership than either Hafizullah Amin, who came after him, or Babrak Kamal or Nijaballah. And the DPRK did not endorse the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan. And lastly, in 1983, Korea Today magazine marked the 5th anniversary of the Afghan Revolution, saying that the Korean people warmly congratulate the Afghan people on the day of the revolutionary victory and wish them greater successes in the struggle to fulfill the second stage task for social and economic progress proposed by the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan. So anyway, let's get back to the final subject, which is has come up in different discussions, such as the Staffordshire KFA UK informal meeting and a real life meeting of the British Group for the Study of the Juche idea, and that is the need to win students to the Juche idea and to KFA UK. And I hope there's actually university students watching this video. President Kim Il-sung himself broke with the factionalists and flunks in Korea, and he formed a new revolutionary movement that was actually based on youth and workers, and it included both students and school students. So they're an important force. Today in the UK, many students are apolitical and swayed by consumerism, materialism, and social media, but some are interested in politics. Unfortunately, they are misled by Trotskyite factions like the Revolutionary Communist Party, which some people are telling me that this organisation is a state front of British and US imperialism. It's been deliberately set up to divert the revolutionary energies of disillusioned youth and workers. And of course, the Socialist Workers' Party as well. However, we should be more combative. Followers of the Juche idea can and must point out to these students that Trotskyism has achieved absolutely nothing apart from bankrupting Liverpool City Council in the 1980s and putting council staff on the dole and putting up the rates, or in the case of the Sri Lankan Trotskyites, actually joining hands with the imperialists and the revisionists in suppressing the JVP uprising in Sri Lanka in 1971. So Trotskyism is a dead end, and we think that many of these students who do support Trotskyism will actually realise its bankruptcy and look for an alternative. That's where the DPRK and Juche come in, because under the guidance of the great Juche idea, the Korean people have built a truly independent state that's not a member of the IMF or World Bank or World Economic Forum or WTO or anything like that. It's a totally independent state. And they built an advanced socialist system with free healthcare, free housing, free education, and full employment. And, we must always stress this. Anyway, I will conclude there because I've been talking for a long time. And yeah, we can take about 20-25 minutes of questions. I'll just scroll down the chat and see what sort of questions I've got. And again, welcome to everybody who's joined. Defender of the DPRK. Hello, everyone. Yes, well, hello. Do you think the DPRK is tired of tourism due to the influx of stupid influencers and fake news? Do you think the DPRK will open? Do you think they open up to Western tourism again? That's an interesting point. I think it's sort of come up on previous live streams and at several of our online events. Indeed, when I was speaking to comrades from Staffordshire KFA, yeah, I agree. There is was an influx of stupid influencers who are spreading fake news and hostile anti-DPRK propaganda. And of course, as I've stressed many times, this is in part due to their class position. They come from the privileged bourgeois elite in Britain that gets everything handed to them on a plate, and they don't have to worry about council tax bills or energy bills or food prices. They can just spend money that they want to spend. So they're obviously not going to be very well disposed towards a socialist country, and they certainly, I think, visit it with the wrong ideas. They see the DPRK as an exotic destination, not as a country that's applied the Juche idea and built socialism. But I can't really comment too much on on where, on what's lay behind the DPRK's decision on tourism. I think, yeah, a lot of people will be to in the DPRK will be totally fed up with these people, and you know, years ago, I'd gone for a cup of tea with my guide and her brother in Pyongyang, and this young woman guide was very critical of tourists, and also of a you don't hear so much of him now, but a certain uh, sort of person who used to take a lot of videos about the DPRK and get filmed. And really, at best, they're just trying to promote different tour companies. Some of them actually do work for the tour companies. Whether I think the DPRK will certainly be opening uh, up in October for friends of the DPRK, for Juche followers, for different communist and progressive parties, for the 80th anniversary of the foundation of the Workers' Party of Korea, and possibly they may open up again for tourism. But I think a lot of tourism, a lot of the visits to the DPRK in the future will be basically from delegations of different Juche study groups, KFA, communist parties, etc., and also tourists from friendly countries such as the PRC and the Russian Federation. Right. Mr. Latin American, great to see you on the stream. What is your opinion of the army of loggers who were in Pyongyang during the marathon? Well, my opinion, as I've stated above, is a very low one. I just see them as bourgeois tourists. I was going to put a critique of one of them, on the KFA UK page and on our Telegram channel. You know, saying, "Oh, the DPRK, oh, it's such a strange country." Well, that is his opinion, and it's an opinion that I think is wrong. I mean, to me, a strange country is where you've got people sleeping in the streets, when you've actually got empty houses, and also some people own second and third homes. That is a very strange country. And do you know which country that actually is? Guess. It is actually Britain, yes. And, I think all sorts of things here are very strange. I think DPRK is a very sane country. It's certainly a very peaceful, tranquil country, and one where you won't see vandalism or graffiti. You won't have people come up to you begging, or people trying to sell you drugs. It's a great place. It's not a strange country. So basically, I see the opinions of the army of vloggers of being totally rubbish, and I would urge people to read my accounts that I've written. I wrote several articles last year. I did a live stream on the subject. I actually did a recorded piece with Comrade Lucas Rubio from the Brazilian Songun Politics Study Center in Pyongyang, which is on my on the YouTube channel. And of course, the DPRK actually published my book, Travels in the Land of Juche, Korea, which I recommend people to read. It's actually free, and Also on my lulu.com site, there are different accounts written of when I visited the DPRK. Right, the other question: will there be any church services in Pyongyang for Good Friday? Well, in the DPRK, there's several Christian churches. There's the Catholic Church, which I actually visited in 1993. There are two Protestant churches. One of them actually looks fairly big, and there's a Russian Orthodox Church. Now, I assume the Russian Orthodox Church will celebrate Easter at another time. I hope I've got this right, because I know the Orthodox Church has different dates. But I think the other churches will have Easter services. I mean, they do have regular services. But of course, to most people in the DPRK, the holiday they've been celebrating is the Day of the Sun, and also on the 25th, it will be the anniversary of the foundation of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army. DPRK builds 10,000 flats that are not as cramped with small spaces as in imperialist countries. Well, that's very, very true. Would I have to be a head member of KFA, or could I get in as a normal member of KFA? Well, that's an important question. I mean, I don't know what country you're from, so I can't answer. Really, if KFA branches are sending delegations, it is for them to sort out who goes on the delegation. Naturally, priority and preference will be given to those members who work hard for KFA, defending people's career with no ifs or buts, 24/7. Yeah, and got a good work record. Right, so you're from KFA Australia. Well, we recently changed the delegates there. You know, it is something you would need to ask KFA Australia about, you know, if they get an invitation to visit DPRK, whether who will go on the delegation. Right. Well, while people, we've got another 12 minutes of questions. So while people think of a few more questions, I should just put a few relevant links in the chat. Well, again, to answer the question, not that I know of. Anyway, I've just put a link to my latest book, Anti-Revisionist Fortress of Juche. Right. Have I been to every province of the DPRK? Well, occasionally I get asked that question. The answer is no. But it doesn't mean to say that I've just only visited Pyongyang. I've visited quite a few places in the DPRK. Not just Pyongyang. I've been to Kaesong. Yeah, I've been to the Pakyong Falls, which is near to Kaesong. I've been to Panmunjom. I've also been to Sarawon City and, of course, to Sinchon to see the anti-US museum. And I've been to Nampo City, but not for a long time. And I've been to Tian or Tian. Uh, and I've also been to Samijom and to Mount Paktu. And I would also mention that I have travelled the length of the DPRK from Pyongyang to Sinuiju by train in 1996 and 2008. It was incredible. Went through the DPRK countryside and saw quite a lot. Oh, the other place I've visited, I should mention, is Mount Moihang and the town of Hangasang as well. Stayed in the hotel in Hangasang town once, city, I think twice, and once in what people like to call the Pyramid Hotel. That is basically my DPRK travelling experience. But one day, and my money's running out, I'm not a millionaire. One day I'd like to visit Chongjin and Kimchake and Wonsan. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's. What did the streets look like from the train in 1996? Well, I say both 1996 and 2008. Basically, as far as we could see, from the train in 1996, although there was all these shock horror reports of the DPRK, and they were saying that all 3 million people had starved to death. We didn't see anything like that at all. We're not denying that. Some parts of the countryside basically looks like they needed investment. Not, and I don't think people's lives looked that easy. But we didn't see starvation or famine, or anything like that. We spent a few hours at the border in Sinuiju. What I could say, no, I don't. Probably, I'm not trying to have a go at the China fans, but when we crossed into China in 1996, it certainly looked like there was two social systems. DPRK socialism and China was something else, because when you got onto the Chinese side of the border, you had Chinese yuppies with mobile phones. It looked very unsocialist. Okay. And that book is about my visit in the April 2024. And it's a free of charge book for people to download if they want to. I would I would urge people to visit the DPRK. I know it's expensive. I know particularly in Britain, we've got austerity and living standards are going down. But if you can save the money for a trip to the DPRK, please go. Because as Koreans always tell me, seeing once is better than hearing 1,000 times. How do you feel the DPRK change from 2019 to 2024? That's an interesting question. I think there is both change and continuity. I would say, to me, probably the biggest noticeable change was there was literally a lot of streets that were not there in 2019. I mean, the Hwasong district is totally new in the DPRK. It wasn't there in 2019, and I remember because I've visited the DPRK many times. I'm fairly familiar now with the route from the airports to the central Pyongyang to the Pyongyang Koryo Hotel, and I noticed in the distance there was these massive tower blocks literally looming up out the earth, which weren't there, and the bus had to sort of veer off to the left because part of the route to the airport was at the time a construction site. So we went down Hwasong Street, and it was out of this world, and it was totally new. And my guide said, "Oh, 1 year before, it was just all rice fields," and was on the I think 22nd floor of the Pyongyang Koryo Hotel. They always put me very high up in the building. It's good because I get a good view of the city. I looked out of the window of the room, and right opposite the hotel, there was a great big block of flats under construction. And I think I can truly say that the amount of construction in Pyongyang was massive, and it was far bigger or on a far greater scale than anything I'd seen before on any visit to the DPRK. Admittedly, I think around 2015, things started to pick up with construction. I mean, you had the construction of Mirai Scientist Street and then later Roomyong Street, but now it's on an even bigger scale than before. And I think that was, I would say, was the main change I'd noticed between 2019, 2024. The shops in the prices, what I'm saying, the prices in the shops looked more or less the same as in 2019. They didn't look like they've changed. And as for, because people have forgotten this story, it's amazing with liars. Their lies get forgotten. But I remember NK News were going on about a $200 or $300 banana. Well, that was nowhere to be seen in Pyongyang, And when I said it to my guide, he just laughed about it. And I hope that answers the question. Yes, I mean the Pyongyang marathon's a good idea, and because there's other events as well. In the past, you've had the April Spring Festival, which I think every 2 years or every 4 years they open that to international guests, and I think there will be also international Juche idea seminars as well. But I think there will be plenty of opportunities for true friends of the DPRK to visit. And I think Australia is a bit nearer to the DPRK than Britain. so perhaps less expensive to travel to. Right. Are there any other questions that people want to raise? We've been talking a lot about bourgeois tourists and anti-DPRK vloggers. Well, I can't really answer that question very easily because I've never actually been to the DPRK as a tourist, only as an invited guest. But usually, uh, since about 2002, I've not changed money into local currency. I've used euros. Back in the 90s, we used to change the money into the DPRK one. But I know some people did change money into the local currency, and they said the value was amazing, and they got a lot of very cheap stuff. Right. Well, I'll just sort of take this last point because I think it'd be time to go soon and catch up with a few other things. Yeah. The question or comment from Juche explains. This is not true. If you've read KCNA recently, you will see it referred to as Day of the Sun. This is another falsehood. It's a false talking point created by the likes of NK News, which of course is a CIA front. So anyway, and I suppose there might be one or two other questions pop up, but it's getting dark here. All I would say is, keep watching the channel. Please share content from it as much as you can, and share our materials as widely as possible. And I'll just give a chance for one last question, and then I will close down. Okay, well, there's no further questions, so I wish everybody a good evening. And if you celebrate Easter, yeah, happy Easter. And I hope to see you all again on the next live stream, which I think is going to be in 2 or 3 weeks' time. Aha, one final question has come up. What is your favourite memory from the DPRK? Well, I have all sorts of favourite memories, I think, going up the Juche Deer Tower, walking across Pyongyang late at night with my guide in 2015, which was a totally impromptu trip. It's not true that everything in the DPRK is pre-planned. We were actually looking for a hot cup of coffee during the interval of the 10,000 strong performance on the River Taedong. I think getting my doctorate was a good memory. And I think being in the DPRK countryside, the 2 train journeys, they're all fantastic memories. So it's hard to sort of put one above another one. Anyway, I think it's been a good live stream. So for the second time, wish everybody a good evening. Happy Easter if you celebrate Easter, and see everybody again, hopefully in about 2 weeks. It might be 3 weeks. We've got quite a lot of activity. I should mention a couple of things. We've got film night on the 28th of April. KFA UK is going to be at the Merseyside Marx's Book Fair in Liverpool on the 10th of May. So if you live on the Merseyside and you're watching this, please make a beeline to the Casa Bar in Hope Street, Liverpool on the 10th of May. And hopefully we're going to have a meeting in Scotland on in early June, in fact. Anyway, that's it for tonight, and it's goodbye from me. And have say, long live the Juche, dear. Meant say.